All right, welcome into the round table. I am Brad Wakai. That is Tyson Gentry. We are continuing along our divisional breakdowns here in the National Football League as we get ready and closer to week one of the NFL, Tyson. I can't believe it's like right here. It's 3 weeks away. I'm so pumped.
And we're, even closer to college football. So we're getting that little app that we got all of the preseason games going, man. We got the little college football appetizer coming up. And then we're in it, dude. And we're in it for, 6 months, 8 months?
Six months, right? Yeah.
So
Maybe
whatever,
seven?
we're not math guys, all right?
No. We're not math. God, what is that, though? Yeah, 6 months, I think, right? February?
Bro, September to December is 3. I know that. And then we're at like 2 from there. But
5, 6 months. We'll go with that.
this is
We'll go
riveting.
with that. Well, we're just too excited, man. We can't. We've been out of school for a little bit, so. But today we're
Not
continuing.
school for like 3 weeks, bro. Graduated college like 3 weeks ago. I can't do math.
Well, we're continuing along our divisional previews, and today we're going up to the AFC North. So we got the gridiron division here, man. Tyson's boys in Cincinnati, his LSU boys are running it here. So we're going to break everything down on that front. First, we are starting with the biggest question mark in the division, I think it's fair to say.
In the
The
league,
Cleveland Browns. In the league, absolutely. It's the Cleveland Browns. And a lot of that has to do with who they traded for. Obviously, Deshaun Watson, his suspension is still up in the air. It was handed out 6 games. The NFL is pushing for longer. So that's may have to go to an appeal. So that's a whole different can of worms we're not going to touch on this football breakdown itself. What we do know is that Baker Mayfield is no longer the quarterback. They brought in Deshaun Watson to be the quarterback. He's going to miss some point or some time this year, whether it's 6 games or more. So Jacoby Brissett will be the quarterback for the Cleveland Browns unless a trade is made. They went 8-9 last year. Baker Mayfield was banged up the entire time. They have a really, really stacked roster. So this is a team who's in a win now mode and who's somebody who definitely thinks they can contend for not just the playoffs but the Super Bowl with the amount of talent they have in this team. Going into the season, I mean, with Deshaun Watson, you feel a lot better about yourself. I mean, he's a high-level player at quarterback. Without him, that opens up a whole can of worms on what Cleveland can actually be.
Well, let's just off rip here. I think he's probably going to miss a year. What do you think?
I think they're going to suspend him for a year.
So as kind of the guys that I'm looking at the Browns through, like that's the lens that I'm choosing. Just because I think that's the most realistic scenario. It just doesn't make much sense to think anything else based on what we've been hearing and all that good stuff. And then the gentleman that they chose to preside over the case is the same one who gave Ezekiel Elliott 6 games when he had, he didn't have 24 sexual assault allegations or whatever. So I'm kind of expecting the book to be thrown at him. And this was the team that I picked. I thought these guys were going to win the AFC a year ago. I was in the right division. I just had the wrong team. It's funny. We were talking before the show, like I don't like Cleveland this year. I think they're stacked, but I don't like them this year. And Deshaun Watson makes them infinitely better than they were a year ago with Baker. Assuming though, it's the Deshaun Watson. Remember, he still took a year off football. I'm sure he'll be fine, but you got to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the best way to put it. Is just there's so many question marks surrounding them. I mean, last year 5-6 in 1-score games, 3-2 in the field goal games, turnover margin of -3, sack margin of -6, even with one of the best offensive lines in the league and one of the premier pass rushers in Myles Garrett. So as stacked as this roster is, there is flaws. There are flaws. I mean, the secondary still has a ton of questions, and you kind of go through the list here. Yeah, there's names that pop out to you, but as a team, how do they look? Now, as far as best case scenario goes for what I think regarding the Browns this year, knowing that Deshaun Watson is going to be suspended for at least 6 games, we both think it'll be for a year. I don't expect very, very good things to come out of Cleveland this year, mainly in part due to Jacoby Brissett being their quarterback. Now, if they trade for Jimmy Garoppolo, that we're going to have to probably redo a segment on the Cleveland Browns because that makes them infinitely better and an actual contender. But as Jacoby Brissett's the starting quarterback for the Browns, I expect them at a best case scenario to finish at 8-9, which is what they did last year, which was disappointing with all the talent on the roster they had.
I agree with that 100%. I think best case scenario is they're like the same team they were a year ago. The problem is in Cleveland is Nick Chubb's getting a year older. And if Deshaun Watson's not playing, then it's another year of Nick Chubb facing stack boxes. Kareem Hunt wants to be traded. Well, he's not getting traded. Well, he wants to be paid. He's not going to end up getting paid by Cleveland. We'll see how that thing plays out over the year, because if they start out 2-4, maybe a team comes calling for Kareem Hunt. But best case scenario for the Browns, I agree. I think, it may be 9-8. Maybe they improve by a game. But I don't see this team making the playoffs without, unless they trade for Jimmy G or Deshaun's suspension, somehow stays at that 6-game number. I don't think this team is going to make the playoffs.
What's the worst case for you? Because we kind of, laid it out. Deshaun suspended for the year, and maybe Nick Chubb, he looks like he's becoming mortal. But what's the worst in your mind?
So I think the worst case scenario for the Browns, and this is, you're going to have to follow me on this one, I guess, but maybe Kevin Stefanski just can't coach. And then maybe this thing that we've been doing for the last couple of years where we just put him with the group of LaFleur and Shanahan and McVay and all those guys, maybe he's not in that group. Maybe he's just okay. And if he's just okay, who the hell is Cleveland going to, look to lead this thing after what the hell you just did in this offseason? Let's not pretend that they blew up the league. I think there's probably 31 owners in the NFL that are pissed off at him. There's probably 31 general managers that are pissed off at him. And to be honest with you, there's probably a ton of coaches that are pissed off with him. And maybe not even for the Deshaun thing, but it's the way, the arrogance that the organization has handled themselves with. It's just been missed up. But the Browns will be the Browns. And that's the worst case scenario, is maybe the Browns are just the Browns.
I didn't even think of that. That's a great thought, Tyson. I mean, think about it. It's the ownership of Jimmy Haslam doing another thing that's going to piss off the other.
And we're
owners.
Surprised for some reason. We're surprised,
right? And it's like, wow, I can't believe the Browns. It's like, what do you mean? It's the Browns. They do stupid shit all the time. That's really good. I mean, worst case for me is it's just they wasted another year with this talented roster. Like Myles Garrett, say what you want about defensive ends, and Aaron Donald's the exception. He's not the rule. How many times do we see players flash over a 4-year period at the edge rushing position, and then it gets phased out because they get a little older, right? And it's all this talent that they've acquired on the team, and it's just another wasted year, which both you and I think that's the case, which ultimately I think kind of goes into the realistic expectations where I think this is not going to be a playoff team. I don't expect them to make the playoffs as the roster is currently constructed at the quarterback position. I don't see it, especially in a tough AFC, especially in the AFC North division that has gotten better with the health of the Ravens, who we'll discuss, and the Cincinnati Bengals, who just went to a Super Bowl out of surprise. That's realistic for me. They're going to miss the playoffs. They're going to waste another year of this stacked roster, and it's just Cleveland being Cleveland.
And I think one thing that people aren't paying that much attention to when it comes to the Browns, because of everything else going on, is Donovan Peoples-Jones or David Bell or one of those guys is going to be your wideout too. And that's not good enough. And maybe when it was Deshaun Watson, we could talk ourselves into Donovan Peoples-Jones. He's 6'4", runs a 4.4. Maybe this guy can be his new Will Fuller. But when it's Jacoby Brissett, it's like, what the hell is Donovan Peoples-Jones or David Bell going to do for me? We have Amari Cooper on one side. We have a tight end who we just paid out the ass that's never done a damn thing in the NFL, and David Njoku. And I'm a David Njoku truther. I think he's a good football player. I don't think he's been given the opportunity. But I don't think Jacoby Brissett's going to be the guy that makes him look like an all-pro. I think that this is realistically the same team as it was a year ago.
And losing Jarvis Landry and Austin Hooper, their tight end, who was a big part of what they did, definitely does not help with downgrading your ability at quarterback. I think it's going to be a rough season for the Browns. We're in agreement there. Okay, let's move to the Steel City and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Moved on from Ben Roethlisberger after he retired, so that whole era is done. Even with Ben Roethlisberger having probably his worst season at QB in the NFL, they continue to just win under Mike Tomlin, man. I mean, 18 straight winning seasons, 9-7-1 last year. They made the playoffs. Wasn't pretty, getting absolutely trounced by the Chiefs, 21-42. 7 possessions in the first half, 7 punts. But Tomlin's back. They drafted a rookie QB in Kenny Pickett, who they think is going to be the heir apparent. Reports are that it wasn't great last year. Or, I'm sorry, great in training camp this year with Kenny Pickett. So they brought, they did bring in Mitchell Trubisky. as well. I think he's going to be the day one starter. I think that's still going to take some time for Kenny Pickett in this league. Your thoughts on the Steelers as we head into the season?
Well, the camp reports also said that Mitchell Trubisky was just as bad as Kenny Pickett. But you know who's been the best quarterback in camp and who might be the Steelers starter in week 1? Who's running with the ones the most?
That?
Mason Rudolph.
Oh, God.
And this is what we were saying pre-draft is none of these quarterbacks are ready to play. And specifically when talking about Kenny Pickett and people are saying, well, he's the most pro-ready. It's because it's a trash quarterback class. You can be the most pro-ready and not be a good pro. And that is kind of where I expect Kenny Pickett to land. I think that this team, to me, the defense is going to be the defense. TJ Watt is going to be a monster. You have studs all over the place. They'll hold it down to the best of their ability, right? Because sometimes they get beaten track meets. We see that quite a bit. And for some reason, some of these other teams in the division seem to know what buttons to push on the Steelers defense to kind of get things to work in the offense's favor. And when you can't score points, like Najee Harris touched the ball like 1 billion times last year. That can't go up. And his efficiency probably doesn't get better. Like the Steelers are going to be bad. And I think that we're giving Tomlin the benefit of the doubt because he's a great coach. But like top to bottom, this roster doesn't look great.
It doesn't. And you lose Joe Hayden at corner. Joe Schobert, who's a big part of their linebacking core, is gone. Eric Ebron, who was a good tight end for him, and Juju Smith-Schuster, whose antics, I guess, ran a little thin there, and he's gone. Also, Ray McLeod, special teams returner, and James Washington gone too. I think it was good to add Miles Jack. I think that was a good addition for them. Levi Wallace, I think, is a really good addition for them at corner, who's, let's be honest, been a secondary. It's been very porous in the recent years in Pittsburgh. So those are good additions. But even with all that, best case scenario for me is Kenny Pickett's able to win the job. He's able to flash in his rookie season and show signs that, hey, he is the rookie QB of the future. He is our franchise QB of the future. What you're able to do as like a long-term perspective for the Steelers, if that happens, you're able to start spending money elsewhere in positions of need. They're already doing it on the defense this year, but then you're able to transfer some of that into the offense where there's especially the offensive line, where there's a clear gap between anything competent and what the Steelers are putting out right now. So best case scenario for me is Kenny Pickett looks like he could potentially be the franchise QB for the Steelers, and they're able to allocate money in the salary cap to the offensive line, which is a huge need as they continue to keep Pickett on his rookie deal.
I think that's it. As Kenny Pickett does his best, like Davis Mills impression of a year ago. Not that they play the same kind of football, because Kenny will get after you a bit, right? He's a better athlete, I think, than people understand. But, like, he's not going to show up and beat Justin Herbert. I'm beyond positive of that. But he could maybe throw for 220 yards a game. And if he can, then the Steelers are going to be in a good spot because, again, and by a good spot, I mean maybe they're fighting to get back to that 500 number. Like, maybe, like that could be a realistic thing that happens if he is that good. The issue, and that's why I think we can just go right into worst case here, is I don't think that's him. And I don't think Mitchell Trubisky is – there was a report that he went like 0 for 16 in red zone drills at camp. That's not very good, Brad.
No, it's not. It's really
I would say that's below average. And I think that's Mitchell Trubisky. Like, we know that. This isn't a guy that we're trying to, like, squeeze every last drop out of. We saw it. We understand. If Mason Rudolph takes real snaps for this team this year, they're in trouble. But I will say, before we get out of the Steelers thing, I think George Pickett's a monster.
Well, you told me that. You told me that, man. You put George Pickens on my radar. Remember, for those who don't know, he was a monster at Georgia, tore his ACL, and was kind of under the radar for a bit. But one of the top-rated players in high school had flashes all over college football before he had injuries. But he could be really good for this team. I think worst case for me here is that nothing looks competent and they're like really bad. I mean, the offensive line is already one of the worst in football. I think what that's going to do is really highlight how bad this team is. Last year, and Big Ben wasn't great, but he was able to audible out of certain things. He was able to convert on third downs and shift and know things, but being a veteran, that I don't think Mitchell Trubisky and Kenny Pickett clearly are going to be able to do. So that's going to put more pressure on the offensive line to actually block for these running backs, which they didn't do last year. It's going to put more pressure on the QB just based off sheer blitzing. And they faced, I think, like a top 10 lowest amount of seven plus personnel in the box. And that's due to Ben Roethlisberger. Why would you want to do that against Mitchell Trubisky or Kenny Pickett? Put 7 in the box, challenge them on the run game. And I think that's going to really hurt the Steelers. I mean, I'm talking like worst case scenario, this team is a 3-4 win team. And
they could be fighting with, the Falcons and the Seahawks and everybody else that we haven't gotten to yet. But like the Texans, like they could, that's in the realm of possibility here.
Now, realistically, I think they're going to be bad. I don't think there's going to be as bad as like the doomsday scenario I just laid out. I think they're going to be way too well coached, and their defense is going to be too good to allow it to happen. Like they're going to win games in spots where they win the turnover battle. They have big plays and timely moments, and they're good enough to get victories. But realistically, this is going to be the first season that Mike Tomlin goes under 500. I just don't see it. This will be the first one that the Steelers under Mike Tomlin finished below 500. I'm booking that down.
And realistically, for me, Mitchell Trubisky's back on the Bears. Like this is kind of what it feels like. It's a well coached Chicago Bears team. Like this team, what are we talking about? Like under 500, I feel like we just did the Peep Show. If you haven't heard of it, you've heard of it now. Go check it out. Brad just picked the Ravens as immortal lock over there for a little something, and now I think he's going to mortal lock the Steelers under win total.
I think I am as well, Tyson. And we'll get in that when we get into our NFL betting shows, which I can't wait for, is we're going to do player props and all that. Like, it's going to be awesome. But I think you're right. I think that's a little tease for you. I think I might be going under their win total this year. But a team that I know you love, so I'm going to give you the floor here, Cincinnati Bengals. And what's not to love about them? Going to the Super Bowl, your boy Burrow, your boy Chase. So why don't you take the floor on this one?
First of all, I didn't see this coming from Cincinnati a year ago, but I don't think anybody outside of, maybe even that locker room thought this was coming. Joe Burrow showed us he's a gangster, right? He's a premier quarterback in the NFL. He can win football games. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, for my money, you're talking top 3 wide receiver duo in the NFL, and they might not be 2 or 3, right? They're impressive. Joe Mixon, impressive. The offensive line, huge boost this summer with some of the guys that they brought in. The defense, better than we thought it was going to be, right? It was it was a strength of the team at times. But now we hear maybe Jesse Bates is unhappy. Maybe he wants out of playing with those guys. One thing I'll say on Cincinnati, Brad, is I think that this offense is going to be better. Like, I don't think people are, thinking that way. I think the regression is coming is what a lot of people are thinking in their heads. The offense wasn't great except for 4 weeks out of the regular season a year ago, right? They had a couple blow-up games. They dominated the Chiefs. There was some moments, and then they rolled it all in at the end of the season, and they kept going. There were times when we were like, dude, Zach Taylor still has no idea how to use Joe Mixon. Like, this offense doesn't look great. I think there's tons of room for improvement. Look, everyone wants to pretend like the Bengals are this pass-happy bunch. They were about as balanced as it gets last year. I think it was 52% running the ball, like 48 passing or something like that. I expect that passing number to go way up. I think Burrow, with that offensive line, hopefully for the first time can be out of that bottom 5 for sack total. But I think the Bengals offense will be better. The question mark is, does it matter? Like, how much luck was involved on their run to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, and that happens a lot. I mean, you're going to get lucky on any. I mean, the Rams had a lot of luck too as they made their way to the Super Bowl. But to kind of touch on your point, I mean, the regular season, it's not like it stood out and you're like, oh, this team's going to the Super Bowl. I mean, 10-7 in the regular season, started their playoff run, and looked really good offensively and defensively. They clicked. I think they only allowed like 7 points in the third quarter since week 11 all the way up to the Super Bowl, like something insane. Like, it was crazy. But I mean, they did lose some big players. CJ Uzama, tight end. I think that's a big loss for them. They bring in Hayden Hurst. So I mean, he hasn't been elite, but
one person on their roster I think that might get a little love this year, Drew Sample, second-round tight end out of Washington a couple years ago. He's more of a blocking tight end, but I think, tight end's the longest position to learn in the NFL. Maybe they're thinking he's going to grow into that role. Because it's not like C.J. Uzomah was a good player for them, but, the Jets didn't blow the market wide open to go get
right.
him.
Like, he's not Mark Andrews by any means. But, Riley Reef, I think losing him, they supplemented. They brought in, Lyle Collins, Alex Kappa, Ted Karras. So, they're fine on the O-line. But Larry Ogunjobi, I actually think, is a big loss, along with Jordan Evans and Darius Phillips on the defense. But Lou Anarumo was awesome as defensive coordinator leading up to this throughout the playoff run. So he'll figure things out. He did. I think the one thing, before getting your best case with the Bengals, that I'm curious to see regarding this offense is Joe Burrow attacked a lot, and a lot of their big plays came from single high and cover 1 and cover 3 looks. Now, if you've been following the NFL, for those listeners out there, how do you take away big plays? You have to go too high safety look. Joe Burrow said he fully expects them to get a lot of those looks this year. How do they adjust on offense? How does Zach Taylor adjust on offense? We'll see. But let's jump in the best case for you regarding the Cincinnati Bengals.
Well, they are going to see more too high. And I think best case for that situation is Joe Mixon. I think that's a pretty good remedy there out of the backfield. I think Tyler Boyd, you're telling me we have too high safety. I just got to beat, one guy and go sit in the zone somewhere, 7-8 yards over the line of scrimmage. Joe Burrow will find you. Joe Burrow is a surgeon, right? I was telling you, I was on this show when he was in college. I was like, I've never seen somebody at this age do these kind of things. And he just kind of walked in and did it day one. And best case scenario is that he is pissed. He's pissed off that they just lost the Super Bowl. He's ready to roll, and this offense does take a step forward. The defense maintains. I think that is absolutely best case. I don't see a scenario that this defense is going to be like way better than they were a year ago. But if the offense gets better and the defense maintains off a team that just went to the Super Bowl, Brad, it's a pretty good recipe.
Yeah, absolutely. Best case scenario for me is they get right back there. We saw it. They did get lucky. They probably should have lost against the Raiders, but dude, it's football. Like, crazy shit happens all the time with crazy bounces. Like,
also,
I hate that whole thing.
It's easier to get lucky when you have Jamar Chase and
right.
you have T. Higgins and stuff like that. Like, it's harder to get lucky when you're throwing the ball to Donovan Peoples-Jones. When you have these home run hitters all over the field, maybe it's not luck anymore. Maybe we're using the wrong word.
Exactly. Like, you got blue chip players everywhere on that offense, and actually on that defense as well with a few of these guys. But you look at it, man. 4-5 in 1-score games, 3-4 in field goal games. Man, those aren't like, whoa, what a lucky bounce. It was like they're underperforming in those games as well, or at least below average. So best case, they're right back there, man. They traded haymakers with the Chiefs. They traded haymakers with the Rams, and some people say they probably should have beat the Rams in the Super Bowl at some point. An amazing game in that Super Bowl. So best case scenario, they're right back there and they're contending for the Super Bowl. Now, worst case for me is they do get figured out a bit and there is some sort of regression. Now, I agree with you. I don't think it's going to be like eye-opening, like, this team sucks now, what the hell? But more so it's like, okay, this team, there's at least some blueprint to stop this explosive offense last year. And I'll put it out here in regards to this. They were the 7th healthiest team in 2021. They're going to be more banged up. Now, hopefully it's not anybody of name, Chase, Higgins, Burrow, and hopefully it's not anybody, obviously. But you're going to get hurt in the NFL. And they face the 5th toughest schedule this year, which I think is difficult. You're going to face a tough pass defense. So we'll see how they adjust to that. So worst case scenario for me, I still think they make the playoffs. I think they're that good. But worst case is they get figured out a little bit and they just don't look as potent, and they're an early exiter from the playoffs this year.
And I see their worst case, kind of like when the Falcons lost Super Bowl to the Patriots, where it was a team where we still, like, that team's in there. Like, we know it's in there, but we only see it sometimes. And they can't unleash that team, because it was interesting to watch them game over game, like, get better in real time. Like, they were getting better in third quarters of games and then fourth quarters of game. It doesn't really happen. Everybody was so locked in. So worst case for me is that there'll be a little bit of regression, a little bit of complacency. It's a young team, young head coach, and it's kind of an organization that's never had success, let alone in the modern, I guess, since the 90s, like late 90s, 2000. Like this has been kind of a shit show in Cincinnati for the better part of 20 years here. So worst case for me is like they don't know how to sustain this at an organizational level, and it leads to some very tough decisions to be made because T. Higgins is coming up for contract, and then you have Burrow's contract, and then a year after Burrow's contract, we have Jamar Chase's contract, and now it's like decisions to be made. The Bengals have shown us time and time again that they will save a penny.
Oh yeah.
And if they do that again, they're fucking up a great thing.
Realistically, not much to add here. I mean, I'll put it in a fun way. They're going to be a team that you're going to see a lot on NFL Red Zone. Like they're going to be high flying. They're going to be fun. You're going to be seeing sick plays out of all their blue chips on offense, and Burrow is going to be doing awesome stuff. And realistically, you're going to see a lot of them because they're going to be really good. Now, I will add this. Dax Hill, who they drafted in the first round, safety out of Michigan, I think that's going to be a name that people are going to get used to real quick. I think he's going to be a stud. And if Jesse Bates does feel like he wants to leave, I think Dax Hill, there's the potential he may be even better than Jesse Bates in a couple of years.
Well, hopefully Jesse Bates is wearing midnight green. Then Dax Hill can be as good as he wants. Well,
Love that.
Realistically, like I think this team makes the playoffs. I think this team probably wins 10 or 11 games. And I don't think this team gets back to the Super Bowl. But again, what they were able to do during the postseason last year was for a young team to be able to put that together. And it wasn't like they were going in there and beating the shit out of people. They were figuring out how to beat you during the game. And if like they did that a year ago, this team like realistically could be representing the AFC again. Tougher than the AFC by a lot.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Ravens to round it out here. Just to talk about a banged up team, man. I mean, 8-9 last year, which is actually pretty crazy considering that they were the most injured team in 2021. You know, Lamar Jackson got banged up. All their running backs hurt. All their corners were hurt. Their offensive line, Staple on the left tackle, Ronnie Stanley hurt. I mean, this team was a walking infirmary. It was crazy. I've never seen anything like that cluster injury-wise. Like, it was ridiculous.
Well, they have the last play of practice before the season started. They had Dobbins tear his ACL, and then the next play, Marcus Peters tore his Achilles.
Peters, yeah, something like that. It was insane, dude. It was nuts. So reset on the Ravens. I think them coming into the season, right? We're still waiting on Dobbins. We're still waiting on Edwards to be fully cleared and like, hey, these guys are ready to go. Lamar's there. Contract's still a dispute, kind of up in the air. I think he's going to get paid. I think everybody in the organization thinks he's going to get paid. Now, lost Bradley Bozeman at center, Jimmy Smith at corner, Justin Ellis D tackle, and obviously Marquise Brown. They traded away, but did add Marcus Williams at safety. That was their big addition that they went after. Morgan Moses on the offensive line, which I think is good for them. I think Kyle Fuller at corner, not great like he used to be, but I think that some sort of supplementation in the secondary that got kind of torched last year just due to their injuries. Very interesting team, Tyson. The Ravens coming back. It feels like they got a whole recruiting class back, because all the injuries.
But they lost Hollywood Brown, but who have I been championing for 3 years since he was wearing a Golden Dome helmet? And not the Golden Dome. He was a Minnesota Gopher, baby.
Your boy Bateman. Rashad
Bateman is going to take a step this year that is going to be so vindicating. This dude is a monster, man. Like, they lose Hollywood, and everyone's like, what is this passing offense going to look like? Rashad Bateman was better than him with Tyler Huntley, and he was better than him in the last couple of games of the regular season. Rashad Bateman doesn't drop wide open touchdowns. Hollywood Brown was on pace for like a top 5, top 6 season before Lamar got COVID. Rashad Bateman is going to be kind of finishing around that 10, 11, 12 marker for wide receivers, I think. And I don't think that's factoring into people's projections when they talk about the Ravens. We know Mark Andrews is a beast. And one thing that I think that we know, but we don't know for sure, is that J.K. Dobbins is a beast. But guess what? They get Gus Edwards back too. So they bring in Mike Davis, right? There's a handful of guys there. And the Ravens have shown us, they'll go get Alex Collins off the couch, man. Like, if you're back there, we're going to scheme you to be able to score. Lamar Jackson, if he stays healthy this year, I have no reason in the world to believe that he can't win another MVP award. Like, that defense is full of dogs. They're incredibly coached. And I think that the conversation about the Ravens has been Lamar's contract and trading away Hollywood Brown, when the conversation should be, like you said, like this is 11 new guys.
Yeah, dude, it's great. There's always been like hype around the Ravens, right? Since Lamar's been there, like, oh, this team's gonna be awesome. There's nothing.
We're bored of him.
We're bored of the Ravens, I guess. We're sick of their offense. But all right, so best case scenario for me, I firmly believe this, and I was thinking about it the other day. Best case scenario is that this team can win the Super Bowl, and this team does win the Super Bowl. And everybody's like, "You're crazy. Are you kidding me? Have you seen these guys? What they've done in the playoffs? Look, they were first in the AFC in December before Lamar Jackson got hurt, and that's with all these cluster injuries, bad defense, due to their injuries." Offense that was severely limited for what they want to do. To bring in everybody back plus additions that they think are better than who just exited that team. And they didn't have to go crazy because they know all these guys are coming in. This feels like a team that's like, oh, you forgot about us? Oh, here we come. And they're going to have a big year, I think. So best case scenario, this team finally puts it together and then they win the Super Bowl. I think that's their ceiling.
I agree. I agree with you. It's funny. We're kind of in lockstep here on a lot of these bold, I guess, calls that we have. But maybe that's just what we do over here. Maybe they're not bold. I think that the Baltimore Ravens are good as fuck. And like that's the end of it. Like this team is awesome. This team was awesome a year ago with everything going on. You look at their record and you're like, that's horrible. But if you did that to any other team in the NFL and said, go ahead and go 8-9, I don't think they're maybe. Nah, I can't come up with one. I don't think there is one in the league.
Maybe the Niners, because they always get hurt.
Right. Yeah, well, that's true. Maybe they could have done it. But would Trey Lance have won 8 games last year? Probably not, is the thing. And so Harbaugh needs more respect. His brother is in the news every day for something, and we have a better coach here, a more accomplished coach here who just doesn't wear khakis as much, and all of a sudden we love one and don't talk about the other. Best case scenario is that the Ravens run this division. Like clean house in this division, dominate the Browns, dominate the Steelers, even splitting with the Bengals. Like I think this team could realistically go 5-1 in division, and if they do that, we're talking about the number 1 seed in the AFC.
Worst case for me is, and I love Rashad Bateman too. Worst case for me though is that besides Mark Andrews, they didn't go out and be aggressive and get a receiver. They want to just bump everybody up. They like Duvernay. He's kind of explosive. Okay. I think he's going to be pretty sneaky this year. And Bateman, they think so bona fide number 1. Now, you draft him at the position they drafted him. And if you trade away Marquise Brown, the next progression for Bateman is to be that number 1. So they're like, why would we go get a number 1 guy? This is our number 1 guy. That's what we drafted him for. So worst case scenario for me, the offense isn't great in terms of the passing ability. I think the rushing ability is going to be awesome. But worst case is that they flame out again in the playoffs and Lamar looks in over his head in the playoffs. And then it's kind of at that point where, hey, man, this guy's really awesome. He's flashy. He's cool. But, we're just about to give this guy a huge extension. We haven't had any playoff success with him. I think that's ultimately the worst case scenario for the Baltimore Ravens.
I was going to say something like maybe, Lamar isn't good enough for them to want to extend him and all this stuff. But, no matter who's running the GM duties in Baltimore makes the right decision over and over and over and over again. And so if they let Lamar Jackson walk, I think in my head I'd be like, oh, what's wrong with Lamar? But I will say, worst case scenario is that this team just, doesn't have it. Like maybe this is one of those years where running the ball, it just doesn't win you enough games in the NFL. There are teams that can't throw year over year. The Eagles a season ago, right?
Yep.
Sneak in the playoffs just by running the ball. But sometimes those really good running teams, that's the Browns how that worked for years, right? Peyton Hillis had like 22 touchdowns. They won 2 games. Like maybe they just can't throw. And that's the only worst case scenario I can wrap my head around. But I've been on here pounding my desk, pounding this table that Lamar Jackson can throw the football for 4 or 5 years now since he was at Louisville, right? Since the year before he won the Heisman. I was on here like, I think this guy's a better passer. And I still think that. And I think that it doesn't matter who's playing number 1 because I think that Hollywood Brown wasn't ever as good as we thought. And I think Rashad Bateman as is a year ago was just as good as Hollywood Brown. And so I think he's going to be better. I think that's an upgrade. And so for me, worst case scenario, like with those two things, like I don't see how this team doesn't win 10 games.
Realistically, for me, Tyson kind of teased it, man. They're going to win the AFC North. Like, this is your division winner, the Baltimore Ravens. I expect them to be awesome. I expect them to have a fantastic regular season. Realistically, for me, I expect them to lose before the AFC Championship game. That's what they've shown me, and that's what we're a show me and improve show. We sometimes make zany predictions, me especially, but mainly we're show and prove here on the round table. But I think this team is going to be awesome. They're going to win this division. They're going to win it running away.
I think realistically this team wins like somewhere between 12 and 14 games. Like I think this team, I mean, a year ago, right? Like if they have even average injury luck, I think we get 2 wins there. And I just think the team is, look, man, when the Ravens are pissed off, football's better.
Oh, yeah.
And like, so the team as currently constructed is, you got to show me, because like, I'm not going to go on here and say they're going to win the Super Bowl because I haven't seen that from Lamar. But from the Ravens, from this coaching staff, from this organization, they've showed over and over and over again that they're more than capable of winning 12 to 14 games, getting in the playoffs, beating the shit out of the Raiders in the wild card round or the divisional or whatever, and then losing. And realistically, that's kind of what I expect.
All right. Well, that's our AFC North preview. I think this is going to be a fun division this year, man. I mean, honestly, even with the uncertainty with the Browns, Steelers going to be Steelers. You know, your Bengals are going to be fun, and then our Ravens are going to be fucking high flying again.
It sucks, man, because normally I have like one team that's not like my favorite team that I like to lock in on, and I have like 2 in the AFC North. So it's going to be a long year, man. I'm going to be watching all 22 tape, you know, until the wee hours of Monday morning trying to see what happens.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I can picture you already, man. You're gonna get out of football season. You're gonna be like, oh, what happened?
The beard.
The beard's gonna be even longer.
I just got done watching.
All right. Well, we appreciate you guys watching as usual, listening as usual. As always, we appreciate it if you like, subscribe, and share the podcast, whether it's on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. We really appreciate your support. In the meantime, follow us on Instagram at _ the roundtable pod _ same thing on TikTok at _ the roundtable pod _ or on Twitter at TRT _ pod. We have picks out for our college football preview shows. We have win total bets. We have who's going to win our conferences. ACC's out, Pac-12's out, Big 12's out. So follow us to follow those picks. Watch those episodes. They're up on all platforms as well.
And we're getting into the big dogs now. Tomorrow we're getting into, you know, Brad's got Penn State stuff hung up all over his room there. So we're getting into the Big Ten, man.
Absolutely, man. And then we're going to end with the SEC, and then we're going to talk about some other college stuff. More gambling stuff regarding the NFL. We're just doing football breakdowns right now, but as we get closer and closer, all props are going to be available. We're gonna try to make you some money as we break down win totals, conferences, long shots, whatever props are out. We'll be analyzing that and get you going regarding everything sports betting in the NFL. As always, we appreciate you listening. Until next time, peace.